grew up in the Waikato on a number of dairy farms with my parents, and went to boarding school. That was kind of the summary was always your classic kid that loved rugby and sport, and didn't spend too much time enjoying, or too much time in the classroom, I guess, or enjoying that sort of thing.
Welcome everybody. Today we are having a candid conversation with Craig Piggott, CEO and founder at Halter. I won't butcher the introduction as to what Halter does, but Craig, if you could give us a bit of background as to who you are and what Halter does.
Cool, thank you. Pleasure to be here. To summarize what Halter does, we build a system or a set of technologies that go from hardware all the way through to an app on a phone. And we use that system to understand more or less everything about, at the moment, a dairy cow, but long-term an animal. And we track things like health. We monitor these cows. We also train them to respond to a set of cues. And with that, we're able to actually guide these animals around a dairy farm, reduce labor, increase milk production, decrease animal health issues and things like that. So it's kind of a full system to help manage a dairy farm at the moment. So
amazing. And I'm glad I didn't try and take that on. I was going to say that you can drive dairy cows around a farm via remote control, which I think was maybe one of the descriptions that you gave once upon a time, but obviously evolved considerably from there.
Floating around somewhere.
Craig, if you don't mind, we're just going to rewind the tape a little bit and maybe dig into, how you sort of were when you were a teenager and whether or not you were sort of had your idea set on becoming an engineer or getting into tech. Tell us a little bit about, what you were like as, say, a 15-year-old.
Yeah, at 15, fair to say I definitely didn't know anything about tech at all or the startup scene. Life was a lot simpler, and I was spending my entire time pretty much in the country on a farm, and away from engineering in general, but also Auckland and tech in general. So I grew up in the Waikato, went to boarding school, always knew I loved solving problems, being outdoors, kind of working hard and getting stuck in and that kind of stuff for sure. But didn't really have any kind of set intention on that. It wasn't until I went to engineering school in Auckland that I started to understand a little bit more around, I guess, the tech environment. But even then, it was mostly just engineering at the time, kind of head down, learning as much as I could. But as an engineer, the dream role, I guess, and especially back in 2016, was Rock Lab. In terms of engineering companies doing cool stuff in New Zealand, Rock Lab definitely stood out. This was about a year and a half before their first launch. And so kind of in pursuit of a job at Rock Lab, I started to learn more about tech companies. And then after I was fortunate to get a role at Rock Lab, my eyes were opened completely into this little world or environment of kind of high growth tech, high performing companies. That was a very pivotal moment in my kind of journey towards tech.
Interesting. So never any aspirations of being a farmer, or, did your parents, you come from a generation of farmers?
No, my parents, my dad's actually a builder by trade. And they both had worked on farms for a long time. I knew I could. It was kind of, I guess, a backstop. Knew I'd be pretty good at it, and I actually enjoy being on a farm. But I guess wanted to try and do more and have a bigger impact on the world if I could. And so no intentions to be a farmer, but still very much enjoy getting back on the farm and kind of experiencing the roots as such. But it's pretty crazy where life takes you.
When you decided to study engineering in Auckland, Was anyone sort of influential in that, or is that something that you just naturally had an interest in and thought that that was the best guess at that point in time?
I was very single-minded, actually, or single-focused at that point. I didn't really think I would go to uni actually at all. I was more of the belief of kind of that like self-employed, go start a company or just go work hard and kind of earn a living. And so mechanical engineering was slightly related to the love to solve problems and learn how things worked. And so I could kind of see myself, oh, okay, if I want to go to uni, then that's probably the one thing at uni that I could do or I'd really enjoy. And so I remember distinctly sitting in first year engineering when it's a general year, and you off the back of that have to have good enough grades to pick your specialization, and pretty much thinking, if I don't get mechanical engineering, there's nothing else here that I'm interested in. Nothing within engineering, nothing within university. And I look back now and go like, oh, it's so stupid. Like there's so many things within university that would be interesting. I know that now. But at the time I was very single focused. And so, it was just by chance. My parents definitely pushed me to go to uni. Like, it's a good idea. Neither of them did, but it was good to do. Like you can always go back farming if that's what you want to do, right? So
yeah. And I suppose that having that really single-minded focus on the one goal probably helped you to excel at that, no doubt, given that you didn't think that there was an alternative that you were interested in.
Yeah, more or less. You kind of have to hit the grades, otherwise you don't really have a plan B, which it probably isn't actually too different to the tech world right now. You kind of have to make it work. Like you don't have a plan B. So, but no, that is, more or less how it went, and did all right at uni. Found myself getting relatively bored pretty quickly. It wasn't quite the hours or the level of work that living on a farm was. Average farmers getting up at 4 a.m, working through till after dinner. If you put that amount of effort into university, A, you get really good at it, and B, you still have spare time. So that kind of got like pretty interested in a lot of other things. Formula SAE is like a student run competition where you build and race an open wheel style race car overseas. And then started working at Rock Lab, and Halter kind of started on the side around that time as well.
It's also kind of, I suppose, a unique perspective to see that the work ethic that you develop on a farm actually like prepared you to be a really good student at university. Were you a good student at high school, or sort of?
No, wasn't a good student at high school. I actually only just got enough, they're called rank points, but enough of those points to get into engineering in the first place. I think you needed 250. I got 254. So I was sitting in engineering class being like, I am most definitely the dumbest person in the room. I only just got in here. So I wasn't a good student at school, but it was mostly because my focus was sport and working. Like I just didn't really see how like school was going to help me that much, and obviously appreciated being educated, but I just focused on other things. And so, but those first few like formative years on a farm were very critical. One definitely was work ethic, and two was kind of no matter what the buck stops with you. It's this like an unreal level of ownership. You don't get to weather report it through to your manager, or like if it's 9:00 at night on Christmas and the cows break out and are on the road, like you have to go fix it. There's no other alternative. You just have to. And so it's this like, it's not very forgiving, and it teaches you a lot about ownership and perseverance and a lot about work ethic. And those are all pretty key traits to like running a startup, and especially in the early years.
And just as a bit of a side topic, do you think then that, New Zealand has a lot of farmers? Do you think there's a lot of farmers out there that could, potentially have a great career in tech if they saw that pathway and took interest in it? Yeah,
actually, I'm very lucky in my role right now, in the sense that we get to work with a lot of the like top New Zealand dairy farmers, and it's actually one of the coolest parts of my job. is getting to talk with them and like understand how they think about things and very principled. Also, you know that they can back it up, all the talk on a whiteboard with the like actual work on the ground and getting things done. And so, no, it is, they're incredible people, and I can see them having a pretty key role in tech in the future for sure, especially some of the younger like generation there. But yeah, I think it sets you up well. A lot of them probably wouldn't know it, that's for sure. But yeah, I can see it.
So the next part I'd love to have a chat about is obviously Rocket Labs. I think that was a pretty influential part of your journey. You sort of became aware of Rocket Lab whilst you're at university or whilst you're sort of in your first role. Tell us a little about
that. Yeah, I learned about Rocket Lab at university. It just was really a conversation, I think, with a few friends talking about cool engineering companies. As an engineer, 99% of the time, your kind of rite of passage is Becker, Fisher Michael Healthcare, like a consulting company. These big firms take dozens of grads every year, if not hundreds, and almost everybody goes and does it. And I actually went and did healthcare for a summer. And so like you kind of are consigned to the thought that that will be your career in a way. And so whenever there's anything different, such as Rocket Lab, you're very interested. And then it's rockets, so you're also even more interested. Didn't know anything about culture at that point, so that wasn't appealing. But yeah, more or less it was just different, and it was rockets. And so didn't really want to be designing HVAC systems in a building or folding chairs or anything like that. So rockets sound pretty cool. So yeah, that was probably how I knew about them. And then when I got there, I thought it would be good, but it was 50 times, 100 times better than I could have imagined, really. And it was made, that change was made even bigger by like kind of the perspective of where I had come from. And so it was actually off the back of my summer at Fisher Michael Healthcare, which at the time I loved. I learned a lot at that internship and met a lot of great people, and there's a lot of smart people around. But walking out of healthcare one day and then a few days later walking into Rocket Lab was the most kind of stark contrast you could find in pace and cadence and like the beat of a company. And yeah, that week, those few days were very key. And every day and every week that went by at Rocket Lab, you kind of learn more and understand more about the culture and the people and what you're doing. And it just gets more and more exciting. And kind of like when you hire someone who's epic and every day they keep getting better and you're sitting there like, yes, nailed that. That's an epic. It was kind of the same feeling at Rocket Lab. Oh, this is way better than I kind of imagined it would be. But for different reasons. Like I didn't look at Rocket Lab and go, oh, it's probably full of world-class people and I really want to work with them. It wasn't, I just wanted to solve cool engineering problems. But after a few months, that was really the sole reason that I was there. And yeah, definitely didn't see that at the start. It was like, oh, this environment just feels different. Like I feel everybody here is trying to achieve something phenomenal. Everyone's ambitious, willing to go the extra mile when they need to, which is a lot. And like we're trying to do something that most people think is crazy. And this is, I want to spend the rest of my life doing this type of stuff. It doesn't have to be at Rocket Lab. It doesn't have to, like, just whatever I do, that's kind of my wish. I love, I guess I love like putting out dumpster fires, and once you put out one dumpster fire, you go searching for the next one to put out. And if you put them all out, you kind of feel a little bit empty and you're like, I'm going to go look for another fire to put out. And so I guess that was the environment that I wanted to be in, and definitely found that at Rocket Lab.
Interesting. So part of that environment is working beside world-class people trying to solve what, yeah, as you said, to the common person seems like a crazy thing to be doing.
Yep.
Did that mean that when you walked in there that you kind of saw, maybe this is me for the next 10, 15, 20 years, or were you just sort of taking it in week by week?
Yeah, I didn't really have I had no intentional time frame. I was excited that I was there before the first launch, because I always thought, oh, that'd be cool. It'd be cool to be there for the first launch. I wasn't actually. I left before the first launch, so my stint was shorter than I than I thought. I left to start Halter. So I got the timing a little bit wrong. Turned out the first launch was still 6 months away after that. So close, but no cigar. But yeah, didn't have a time frame. I would have been happy to stay if I didn't start my own thing. But yeah, kind of the pieces just fell together and it felt like the right thing to do. And I think in hindsight it was. But yeah, that is, I still, like if Halter didn't exist for any reason, I say this openly to my team, etc. I never want to do anything apart from be in those types of environments. And so if that was another startup, if that was another startup someone else started or whatever, like that's where I want to be. It'd be pretty tricky to convince me to go work at a bank or anything like that. I think I'd struggle.
Yeah, I think you most certainly would, given that description. Tell us a little bit about the ideation for Halter. So you've found this incredible place working at Rocket Lab, but you have started to see an opportunity or a problem from your background. Tell us a little bit about how that process started.
Yeah, there's no shortage of problems that I guess I was trying to solve. The farming industry has had very little innovation in 50, 100 years. And a lot of it is done completely separate to farmers themselves. And so it doesn't really like fulfill the right purpose and isn't reliable. And there's a whole lot of kind of problems with that. So I always knew that farming was very old school, especially relative to like what I was doing at Rocket Lab and what I saw at university. And so they kind of felt like a weird gap there. It didn't seem right. And I knew also like I'd go home in the weekends when I got a chance, and your parents are working 100-hour weeks, and you're like, this can't really be right. And then the next crazy thing is farms aren't like small operations. Your average farmer is turning over about $1 million a year, and there's so many inefficiencies in that system that you look at and go like, wow, why don't we do this? And a farmer will say like, well, that's just practicalities of farming. Like when I'm working 100-hour weeks, I don't have time to go do that. And like labor's hard to find and the qualities are hard. And so there's kind of always these big gnarly problems to solve. And the going to engineering school definitely helps the way that you think about it, helps you understand what technology you could use to solve some of those problems. But so that was all fine. But Rocket Lab was really like okay, this is somebody actually doing it right here in our backyard, raising money, hiring world-class people, and just running headfirst at this problem. And it's going pretty well, and I love this. And so that was the, I guess, catalyst to start Halter. And so Halter was just kind of a bit of a side hustle during my time at Rocket Lab, and grew to the point where I went to Peter Beck, who was the CEO and founder of Rocket Lab, and was my boss, and said like, hey, I've got this thing on the side. I'm gonna go work on that. And on the spot, he was super supportive, which was pivotal in Halter. He invested and he jumped on the board. Still on the board today. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible to have that support from someone that you obviously have taken such inspiration from, and also to be working on it as a side hustle whilst working for him. To have that is obviously a pretty amazing thing. In terms of the doing it as a side hustle, to what level had you built out a prototype, or what did the business look like at that stage before you jumped ship?
We did not have a lot of stuff, to be honest. And the simple instructions, I guess, to starting is find your biggest risk and de-risk it, more or less. And so that's like what happened. And so the biggest risk we had was, can you actually train a cow to respond to sound and vibration? Is a cow smart enough to understand that? And so people build apps all the time, people write back-end code. I knew the industry, so I thought if we could build it, we could sell it. Could hire people that, you can cross off a lot of things that just are red herrings. They don't really matter at that point. Find the biggest risk and tackle that. And so we had made progress on that for sure. You could summarize it as we had one cow once show like signs of understanding the collar, and that was enough to get excited and go try and raise money. And that was kind of all that was needed, really. In hindsight, we used to have a saying that was, if we built a prototype, just like an Arduino and a whole lot of breakout boards, and it was on my black dress belt, a pet cow that was really easy to work with, and I'd drive down to the home farm, once a fortnight, once a week, and there were many trips down, 2 hours south of Auckland, many trips down that like nothing worked. All the hardware wasn't built to a high standard because it's quick. All the firmware, like I'm not a firmware engineer. There's a whole lot of factors that you just be trying to string it all together just to get it to work for long enough to get like a response from a cow. And so we used to have a saying, which is like, if it lasted longer than 2 days past when we raised money, we built it too strong. Like we'd put the time into the wrong place. That wasn't the risk. We knew we could build durable hardware when we needed to, but we didn't need to right now. Yeah. And so, that's what we focused on. We used that to raise our seed round of capital. In hindsight, there's probably other ways that you could de-risk it and maybe do it quicker. But at the time, as an engineer, just head down, started working, started to understand whether it was really doable.
Peter Beck giving you advice not to go poaching any of his staff, or where did you build that initial team?
That is one of the very few rules at Halter. Don't hire anyone from Rocket Lab, which we try our best not to do. Pete was pretty instrumental in the calibrating that initial bar for talent. And we also very instrumental in calibrating that bar for the board and for investors. So in kind of every facet of your business, you need to have world-class people and top talent as such. And getting those kind of initial stages right is pretty critical. And so everybody tells you hiring isn't the most important thing and hiring is critical, but like you cannot understand it enough until you hire a few of the right people and a few of the wrong people and a few in the middle, and then you work out like, okay, this is what good looks like and it's what average looks like, and we need good people. And so and interviewing is hard even when you're pretty good at it, and I'd like to say at Halter we're pretty good at it. Interviewed thousands of people and have a few very talented people as well, or a lot of very talented people. You're still only 70-80% hit rate. And so what do you do when you hire the wrong people, and how do you have those conversations? And so, that was all Pete had a very big influence to start with, all the way down to would send him a CV and he'd laugh at it and be like, what? Oh, we thought they were good. It's like, no. And so, board meetings, going through investor lists and him just crossing names off. It was a good schooling on where we needed to be as a company right from day one. Yeah.
And I mean, what a great example to be able to follow and have someone guide you through that process. I'd love to sort of fast forward to the current state of play. So what does Halter look like today? So in terms of headcount, in terms of where you're at, in terms of your solution and system, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, today, start with headcount, it's an easy one. We're about 50 people. We are 80% engineering, growing rapidly, almost in every single department, domain. There's a ridiculous amount of work to do, and we need people to help us pretty much. So a little hiring plug. And we have system end-to-end running commercially on farms in the Waikato. The usage is incredible. It's changing farmers' lives. It runs the most critical parts of their farm. And so, we kind of define that as a small number of customers that love us. And if you can pick between small number of customers that love you and large group that kind of like you, you always pick small number that love us. And so we kind of gone searching for some of the best farmers to help us validate the product. There's still a whole lot of product to build. We can update the fleet of collars remotely, so it's very flexible, and we can keep learning and shipping better and grander product, which is great. So I guess in a way we're only just getting started, but already we're starting to see some good traction there. And And so it's it's a pretty exciting time.
That's cool. And so from a small cohort of customers that love the product and are getting good value of it from today, if you were to get your crystal ball out and sort of look into the 5 years from now, where do you think Halter can be, or where would you love to see the business?
Yeah. So the vision for Halter is to unlock the connection between animals and humans for a better world. And what that really means is what Halter is good at, what we are good at, is taking an intention from a human that can be quite complex in nature. So an example of an intention could be, I want cow 300 to exit a paddock at the back of the farm, travel north through a gateway, down a race or main path through to a cow shed. And that set of instructions is quite complex. And then translating that into a set of foundational cues or instructions that an animal can understand. And so that whole complex path could be broken down to a series of left, right, forward commands repeated over and over. And there are 3 pretty simple commands that you can train a cow. And so that breakdown is what we're really good at and what we want to, keep doing. And also the inverse, where it's if you take the behaviors from this animal, which are quite complex, and really good farmers can look at a cow and be like, she's acting strangely, or why is she slower? Why is she separate from the herd? Kind of categorize all these behaviors with machine learning and pass them back through to the farmer as an insight. Hey, this behavior has changed. This is what the baseline usually is. This is what she's looking like relative to the mob. And this means she is sick for this reason, or whatever that is. And so that back forward kind of translation or conversion is what we really enjoy. And so we want to apply that to cows, obviously, and the market is amazing for that, but also really any vertical, whether I don't know what the next verticals look like, but long term, we would like to own that layer between animals and humans. So that's kind of the 5-year picture.
Amazing. And then, there's a lot of dairy farms in the world, and if you're starting to go horizontal into different animals, what does that look like as a business? Do you start to really scale the growth internationally now, and is there any specific markets that you'd be targeting initially?
Yeah, 100%. So New Zealand is the best place for us to be if you were to start this business. There's about 6 million dairy cows, and the market here is very concentrated. We could be busy here for a long time now. We definitely have global ambitions. So New Zealand, Australia, South America, Europe, organic farms in the US, there's kind of a range of different options there. So when we go into those markets, I'm not sure just yet. We definitely soon, but also in saying that we're going to be very busy in New Zealand. The customer pipeline is already massive. We have no real idea how we're going to serve that just yet. We're trying to still work that out. So it is. It's all kind of go, but we're entering that phase at the moment where it's large scale mass deployment.
Some great problems to have. So with those great problems to have, you're obviously expanding in every direction. We might just quickly, before we get into who you're looking to attract, but just to get a bit of insight into what does the culture look like at Halter. I know that in the past you had referred to your experience working in high-performing teams, and that was what really energized you about the space. Can you tell us a little bit about how that looks today at Halter?
Yeah, we like to say, I guess the most important thing is that you have world-class people in every seat, more or less. So everyone that you work with, everyone that you're surrounded by is truly world-class. And that is the most important thing in my role, and as the managers throughout Halter, we do to try and achieve. And so that is a really, really good hiring process, a really good talent attraction process, good management if people aren't fitting and don't match with the company. And often it's just proper conversations that happen regularly between managers and team members. So that is probably one of the more critical pillars. You could sum that up as talent density. And how does that actually increase over time? How do we attract more and more world-class people and put them into seats as we grow, get a better name for ourselves, etc. Then secondly would be, I guess, how do you grow those people? How do you manage their workflow? How do you give them the context that they need to make really good decisions? And so I guess traditionally at a lot of companies, you'd see very top-down decision-making where the CEO comes up with the direction or the key decisions, and they go down through managers, and what you end up with is these like engineers, and I've been one of them, on the ground doing something where you're like, this just does not make sense. Like I can kind of see the intention, but like in reality, that's not how I would do it. And those people have all the relevant information to actually make those decisions. And if you only have world-class people in those positions, you can really trust them to make those decisions. And when it all falls apart is when you have some mediocre people making big calls and some people make the wrong calls, and then all of a sudden you pull like trust away from those layers and it all ends up at the top. But and so I guess in an environment where you can really trust everybody with big calls, management looks very different. It's not a pyramid. Netflix has this really good thing where they talk about being a tree. And so your senior management is, I guess, the trunk of the tree, and your people managers at the branches, and your individual contributors are right on the edges. And all we do is pass through context. So I pass through like the priorities and how we think about trade-offs and what's important, and we educate. And so we just pass context through all the way to the edge. And then the people on the edge really make the key decisions. And so that is super empowering if you're an engineer, if you're a product person, a salesperson, all that kind of stuff. That is an environment which is pretty neat to be in. And also what's critical to make all this work is a really, really good culture of feedback. And naturally, as Kiwis in New Zealand, it doesn't really happen that much. People kind of shy away from those harder conversations, but having a culture where everybody can give everybody feedback and it actually happens on a daily basis, and all those people on the edges, if one of them does something wrong, it's not the trunk that has to give the feedback, it's everybody around them going like, whoa, that's not how we do things here, or you didn't farm for descent enough, or there's a whole lot of things there. And so both positive and negative feedback. And so it's kind of a few of these like mechanisms that we use to really empower people to thrive and grow and make those key decisions. And as an organization, we can move a lot faster when that happens. And there's a few other things as well, given our breadth: hardware, data science, farm, production, finance, like the number of teams we have and stuff. It makes a lot of sense to have a lot of context passed all the way through to individuals.
So with the sort of bar being set at world-class talent, I presume most of your talent still comes from New Zealand, or are you attracting people from sort of different parts of the world?
We definitely have our fair share of people from overseas. It's particularly tricky at the moment with border exemption process, but still does happen. There is definitely talented people in New Zealand. So every search we do, every role we put out, will gather a mixture of offshore versus New Zealand. We have a bigger presence locally, so we tend to get more applications from New Zealand in general, but doesn't stop us looking. I think over 50%, maybe even over 75% of our hiring is like active outreach, people on LinkedIn, people having coffees, referrals. It's very kind of driven by the hiring manager. It's not a CCAD that a random person applies to. That does happen, and you do find people, and we still do that because there's a chance. But on the whole, usually you've got to go headhunting for the people that are really good.
What are some of the key characteristics that you help qualify those people to fit into that high performance culture, or to fit into the culture that you've fostered?
Yeah. We usually say, internally at least, that our top performers show 3 attributes, and that's outthink, outwork, and outcare. And so I guess you're looking for versions of that in every coffee, every chat you have with people. And so how smart is this person? How hard have they tried in the past to learn? How curious are they? And just raw intellectual, I guess, horsepower in a way. And so that's kind of point number one. Point number two is how hungry are they? How driven are they? How willing are they to put in the time when it's required? And like, not ashamed to say, there is a lot of times when just a lot of work is required. As long as you're obviously thinking about it and you're not doing stuff for like pointless things for the sake of it, then you really have to at times put your head down and outwork everybody else around, like outside of Halter. And so, yeah, someone who's smart, someone who is hungry, driven, willing to go the extra mile, and then someone who cares. And that can be workmanship, that can be personable, cares about the team that they're in, the people around them, shows empathy. Those are really, when we look at the people in Halter that are like flying and growing at outrageous paces, it usually breaks down into those kind of three areas. And so it's a mixture of those. We are very strict on like the no brilliant jerks piece. If you're a phenomenal engineer and work hard, but you're like, no one wants to work with you, no one's bigger than the team, no way. And so we've pretty clear cut stance on that. But yeah, on the whole, I'd say we're a pretty tight team. Everyone brings their whole selves to work. Everyone's pretty vulnerable with each other, which you need to be an effective team. And we all work pretty hard when we need to. And pretty good at thinking, getting on a whiteboard, thinking of first principles, looking at data, making the right calls.
The people that you're trying to attract right now, obviously because you're growing in every direction, who are the people that you want to hear from, aside from, world-class engineers that might hear this? Like, Who are those people that could be listening to this that might be a great person to have a conversation with?
Yeah, first thing I'd say is we are super open to any form of background. You don't have to go to uni. You don't have to have phenomenal grades. You don't have there's no criteria. And I can actually prove that by the number of people we've hired that don't fit the bill by any normal account. Our first software hire, who is still with us today, is our lead front-end engineer. I think the role said you must have a degree, 4 years experience, and be able to work full-time. And he sent me a LinkedIn message and was like, I don't have a degree. I'm actually first year, but I've been writing software for ages, so I'm really good at it. And I can't work full-time, but I can do 40 hours because I'm at uni. And so didn't fit any of those, standard criteria. And he ended up dropping out of uni and he's doing phenomenal. But as an example, so we hire product managers from law companies. We hire all sorts of backgrounds, as long as you are curious, you're kind of a proven track record of at least putting your head down and thinking through things in a smart way. You're hungry, you're willing to work hard, and you care. And so that's kind of how it fits. The roles I could list, I think we're actually defining, we were going through it just this morning, and there was 30 or 40 different roles. So I won't list them all, but they definitely fit into software, firmware, hardware, product, sales, marketing, customer success. A lot of different domains or departments, really. Finance roles, supply chain. Yeah.
If I was to ask one of your colleagues what kind of boss you are, what would they say?
Well, I'm not going to answer that question just by guessing, but my 360 feedback at the end of last year from the team was a mixture of kind of leading from the front, caring, hardcore. Probably be how I'd summarize it. I'd say I like to get into the details, understand who you are as a person and your work, but also have pretty high expectations about your progress, and hold you to account and push you to be better. We say you come to Halter and you do your best work, and we'll kind of drive you to do your best work for sure. So
good stuff.
I don't know if I've answered your question, but
no, it's a great answer. And as you said, you've backed it up by some independence there as well. So knowing what you know now about tech, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self on the farm, sort of plotting your course?
Yeah, do it. I look back and go, I very, very nearly could have ended up just being an engineer in a traditional company for 20 years, and it would have been like life's biggest travesty. The fast-paced environment, high growth, always striving to be better, is like, it's contagious, and I love it. I'll never leave it. And so that's probably, I don't know, that's not really advice, but it can be scary. Like, I definitely think people look at it and it feels intense, and from the outside you're like, whoa, that is full on. And it's always easy to give yourself an excuse. Oh, it's not a good time. I need to save for a house, or I'm going to get married, I've got kids. Like, there's always an excuse. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
Well,
cool. Thanks very much, Craig. It's been really fascinating just having a chat to you. We love what you guys have built, and I think it's an incredibly exciting company that's going to obviously make its mark on the world. So thanks for taking the time, and yeah, we look forward to speaking again soon.
Cool. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Enjoy the day.
You too.